Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Raj Gopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
And how about that for an opener? Justin's like, damn.
Is that new? Is that new?
Boom.
Oh
Boom.
my God. Like, I feel like I need my,
the nominees for best visual effects in a podcast.
Industrial Light Magic has nothing on us. Hey, everyone. It's PVSB, and welcome to Sunday evening's LinkedIn Live edition. And today, we're going to be talking about last week's Shoptalk conference out in Las Vegas. And I am very honored to have joining with me two other great attendees. Not only am I with them last week at Shoptalk, I'm actually going to be with them in the coming week at the Western Michigan Food Marketing Conference out in majestic Kalamazoo. First, I'm going to introduce our very special guest. He's with Amazon Web Services. And he's been a guest on the podcast before. We recapped Shoptalk Europe last year. I'm of course speaking of our dear friend Justin Hahnemann. Justin, how you doing, man? What's going on?
It's so great. It's so great to be here. It was great to see both of you this week. I was excited to get the invite to be joining you tonight. So thank you.
Well, it's good to have you here. And of course, also joining me is my fellow CPG guy. He was in attendance, though I think I only saw you other than the opening night, just maybe once in passing.
Pretty much.
But it's, of course, the Managing Director North America for Retail Cities, the CEO of Consequential Commerce, the host of Fast Forward and the Gildenberg Omnicom. And, of course, I'm talking about Brian Gildenberg. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And, and next week we'll be at Kalamazoo, or as it's known, the Las Vegas of Western Michigan.
So Las Vegas of Western Michigan. I'm flying in on my one flight option a day into Kalamazoo International Airport. I don't know what makes it an international airport. I'm pretty sure they don't fly to Canada, but they call themselves an international airport.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure there's at least one flight a day to an international destination.
Exactly. Maybe they consider Wisconsin international. Maybe that's, or the Upper Peninsula. That could be that's kind of Canada. It's Canada-esque.
It could very well be.
Canada. Guys, thank you for joining me today. It's so good to be able to talk about what we saw, what we heard, and we just wanted to have a little fun. We're going to riff on this. Justin's got certainly a couple things I know he's thinking about. I'm sure Brian does too.
I have nothing.
Before we get to that, the one thing I think we can agree on was there were a lot of events at Shoptalk. Now, for those of you who don't know about Shoptalk, it is, arguably the biggest retail technology, omni-channel digital conference in the industry. It's a pretty big event. There are about arguably 10,000 people who attended. And there are lots.
I think Shoptalk would argue there were more, but yes.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they would, but we'll say at least 10,000. We'll leave it at that. But there are a lot of things going on. There are people on stage. There are meetups.
Some of them weren't even supposed to be there. So,
exactly. There were meetups happening. There are hosted meetings. There are a lot of cocktail parties and events. I think we can all agree that the creme de la creme, the ticket that everybody wanted to have, where it all began was on Sunday evening at
your
Japanese Steakhouse. It would be the CPG Guys / FMCG Guys kickoff reception, sponsored by the wonderful team at Crazy Coupon Lady. It was the place to be seen. Now, that's just my opinion. I'll throw it to you guys. What'd you think?
I'll start. I thought it was incredible. It was a great way to kick off the event. You guys did a nice job of curating a great audience. For those that weren't there, there was a line to try to get in. It was, but also just it was such a great way to start the event. That you guys are really connecting the industry, and while the Shoptalk event itself has great content, it's the events around it, like what you host, that really drive the industry and relationships. And it was but it was above bar, as we like to say at Amazon.
I like that. Brian, what'd you think of the party?
Well, I mean, I'm a data guy, as we heard 75 million times at Shoptalk. It's all about the data. And the fact that we had so many people there, that the poor person who was sponsoring the event from the crazy coupon lady couldn't get back in was a pretty good sign that we had drawn a good crowd. Though I did feel like we should have snuck her back into her own party at some point.
It was pretty bad. There were a lot of people that were standing on the outside looking in, saying, "I can't get in." I'm like, I'm sorry, you should have showed up earlier before they started limiting the fire code implementation. But in all seriousness, it was a great way to kick off the party. We got to see so many of our friends, previous guests on the podcast, and it set the tone for a really wonderful show. And thanks so much to the team, Heather and everyone at Crazy Coupon Lady, for bringing that together in very short order. It's funny because I was leaving the Live Ram conference 2 weeks ago in San Francisco, and got together with my friend Maya for dinner, and on my way out of town, and she said to me, "I love that kickoff party you had at Grocery Shop. You doing that again?" And I said, "No, we too busy, too many things going on." And she was at Crazy Coupon Lady. She said, "Well, let me talk to the team. We'd like to put something together." And a week and a half later, boom, we're at a not only just like a party got together, it was a premier location. We were right there.
Oh, so perfect.
I mean, couldn't have been better. So that was fun. That was really nice. So enough of that silliness. Self-promotion.
No, I think we should just talk about the parties we went to. I think
we should. I had some, I don't know about you, I had some good dinners there. I certainly enjoyed going out, but let's talk a little bit about the show. Justin, I'm going to throw it to you first. What were some of the big things that caught your attention at the show in terms of the topics that were being covered and what really resonated with the attendees?
Yeah. So first of all, we kind of joke about your event, but let's frame things up. If you've not attended Shop Talk and NRF's Big Show, you know that this is. It's not like after the NRF Big Show in January, this is the largest retail event of the year. So, and what Shop Talk does a great job of is putting on an event with great content. Okay. Yeah. And the community, the networking, the relationships, the where you really get into conversation happens around the event. And so you're like, as much as you had a party, actually, there was so much amazing knowledge share happening there between people that didn't know each other and many that did. That's where, like, for me, like, I get the most out of those types of events at a Shop Talk or Grocery Shop or other. So, all right, I'll throw out the first topic. I made a list here of like 3 or 4 big things. So for those, again, that don't know Shop Talk, this is not an IT event. It's a real good mix of e-commerce and innovation and technology people from brands and retailers. So one big topic was, of course, retail media. And I was surprised. That was the first thing that was kind of popping around your event and others that Sunday and Monday. But it was interesting to hear the uptake in retail media networks and the interest in it. And I'm curious to hear how you guys are seeing or what you guys are inferring off that with some of your other people that you're working with.
Brian?
Well, yeah, I think there was unquestionably a ton of conversation about retail media. Yes. And I think a lot of it was good. And I think there's an enormous amount of energy around the topic. I think my observation would be that it continues to be an ecosystem which is going to need to get better defined in order for that phrase to continue to be useful. And Justin, look, we all adore your employer, but I mean, putting an ad on Thursday Night Football and buying a sponsored search on Red Media from Hy-Vee are just not. They're so far removed from one another as to not really be the same thing. But we kind of lump them all together under a bucket of retail media, and I think that phrase has been super helpful for marshaling energy and attention. I think it'll probably need to get a little bit better defined. That was the thing I thought that was most encouraging about Shop Talk was that the conversations about retail media were more pragmatic and focused about what it actually is. That overarching term is still the overarching term, but there were, when you broke the conversations down, I thought the conversations really started to hone in on, what we're trying to do with off-platform audiences, and how we're trying to tell them to on-platform experiences, how we're like some of the real actual issues. I thought that there was some really good conversation about a lot of that, and I thought the people having the conversation understood the topic in a way that was moving it forward. Your thoughts on that, Justin, because you're part of that. You're more part of that one than me.
Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, I saw one recap that made mention, this is a quote, only Amazon could make us cheer for both touchdowns and discounts in the same nacho cheese breath. So, but I think you're spot on, Brian. Fragmentation is the issue in the industry, right? Amazon has massive scale. I heard our dear friend Imtiaz Ahmed from Racket talk about his application of Amazon Marketing Cloud, leveraging first-party data sets that he owned, along with merging that into the cloud, building audiences and targeting advertising and measuring it full funnel. That's really powerful. I heard one person say to me, listen, Amazon's already won the game. They have the scale. Everyone else, maybe there's one or two other players that have scale, not the same scale, but everybody else has got to figure out how they're going to make it easy for advertisers and publishers to implement broadly, to syndicate or put together a scale in a meaningful way.
Can I just, and I'd be curious, I always find that type of conversation to be very, it's the part of Shoptalk I enjoy less than some of the other ones, which is what I will loosely call the tech broiness of it all.
Yeah.
And that comment, like, well, Amazon's already won the game. What are you talking about? Like the amount of money. Not you, Peter. No, you know what I mean. Yeah, but that general, that idea that there's one winner or whatever. It's like, do you have any idea how much money gets spent on media and trade aggregated together in the world? It's like $5 trillion. Like, not one person's not going to win this, right? Like one person, one vendor, Amazon, has a very specific set of business problems that they're solving in a very interesting way. The business problems Walmart's trying to solve aren't actually the same business problems Amazon's trying to solve. Because 85% of Walmart's business is sold in the store. Whereas, God bless Whole Foods, but that's not the same ratio at Amazon. So the business problem that the omnichannel retailers are trying to solve is a really different one. And as a result, that game is still way undefined. Like we're like 4:30 in the morning of day one on that game. So I do think that there's a lot of, I think when the media and tech side of retail media start to dominate the conversation, it always worries me a tiny bit. That the people that don't know anything about retail are shaping the retail media conversation in a way that gets kind of scary fast. So that's my flip side observation on Shoptalk, is when the conversation was left to people that aren't grounded in the actuality of retail, that the retail media conversation can get weird.
I think we could probably all agree that retail media is growing leaps and bounds.
Yes,
and everybody's trying to figure out how to move retail media as a brand advertiser's mechanism from being predominantly mid-lower funnel into upper funnel. And to your point, Brian, the problem that Walmart's trying to solve for is with 85% of their sales in store, how can they leverage that audience platform to deliver meaningful retail media to the shoppers that are in store, not necessarily the ones that are going online. So there's a lot of opportunity still to be had in the marketplace.
Yep, I agree. Still early days, but a lot of good conversation and a lot of, like you said, the name doesn't encompass all of the different various pieces and parts that are, and the situations are different depending on the retailer. All right, I'll throw out the next one. I have to say AI. Okay, so it wasn't an AI show or generative AI show, and yet there was a lot of conversation about where the applications are both in store and digital. And I'm not surprised given the last 12 months. I've talked a lot about this in some of our other discussions together. And it was interesting, right? This has now become a conversation for the business and IT. It's not one or the other. And everyone's searching for and trying to understand what are the real use cases and where's the value.
Brian, from the perspective of specifically generative AI, creating new content from whence it did not exist, not like AI, what we've known as machine learning,
not like a souped up version of advanced analytics,
doing repetitive things over and over again, and that free up humans from the mundane. But from a generative AI perspective, what piqued your curiosity or intrigued you, or did you hear a lot coming out about specific applications of generative AI beyond just conceptual? Is anyone really moving in that direction yet?
I think the use cases are, for the moment, fairly straight up, and I think there's some good reasons for that. I thought Maria Renz from Google Commerce, when she was talking about like when she was trying to find realizing it was St. Patrick's Day and she wanted to wear a green suit, and she went on. Yeah, that was good. And like she custom designed a green suit and then found it at Max Mara, bought it and wore it that night. So I think that kind of thing I think is really cool. The interesting observation, and a shout out to my good friend Michael Stick from Court Avenue, who gave me this metaphor, and I thought it was a really good one, which is it basically said, for all the excitement about AI in general, right? And for all the excitement that massive tech players can bring to a multivariable large language training environment. So like there's a few companies that can afford to train a large language model on reams and reams and reams of information, and they're all the usual suspects in the tech world, right? That's one thing. Most companies that are trying to use AI are going to find out, as Michael said, training AI is a lot like training a dog. Like you don't teach a dog to sit and roll over simultaneously, right? Like you work on sit. Like you do sit, you drill sit, you treat when the dog does sit right, and you keep doing that until you get the muscle memory for sit. Then you move on to roll over. And that's actually the way that training AI for 99% of the world is going to work, which is it's going to work one specific, relatively small bore application at a time. Okay. And that, the more people start to get their head around that, even though it's less sexy and transformational, that's where the real value is going to come, because not only as you do if you've ever had a dog, not only does the dog learn how to do tricks, but you learn how to train it, and you learn the second time you train a dog to do a trick, it's easier than the first, and so on and so on and so on. That's the roadmap to success in AI. So I think, no matter what application people are starting with, you've got to realize that what it's going to do in the short term is do fairly specific things. So, I thought some of the applications around, customized imagery or getting language right so that you can segment, so you can take like what Imtiaz was talking about with his personalized segments. You can create content that applies to that personalized segment and A/B test it. You can do lots of cool stuff, but the roadmap to that is going to be around these very specific applications that in aggregate are going to transform your company. If you're expecting AI to transform your company by waving magic pixie dust at a bunch of problems, that's not going to happen. So,
yeah, we definitely have seen already some very usable, good use cases around, of course, e-commerce listings, titles, bullets, descriptions, AdWords.
Yeah.
The image part is real. It's significant. It's incredibly accurate. And then on the codings, like on the technical side around coding and using models for that, strong. You're right. They're very tactical use cases. I think efficiency plays versus some significant cross multiple platforms or many different data sets. That's still early days. But
and Justin, to your point too, I think the one thing that people do miss with generative AI is the thing that generative AI is best at generating is code.
Right.
In a stunning surprise, code's really good at generating code. So
unbelievable.
Here's what I didn't hear that I was hoping to hear more about relative to generative AI, which is everyone talked about, it's going to help me scale out my creation of content. And that's the real promise. What I didn't hear, and maybe it was because of the archetype of the user, though I did see a lot of brand people there, I didn't see a lot of concern about brand protection. I didn't hear people talking about how do I need to make sure that the generative AI isn't able to overwhelm my brand in the ability to, I'm not necessarily saying control, but protect my brand to make sure that it doesn't get out ahead, and I'm not able to deal with all of the content that could be generated relative to the brand that I'm charged with owning. I think that's going to become a bigger issue as we start to see the output of this, and it's not goes from conceptual to actually being in practice. Brian,
I was one of the last people at Shoptalk, so I was at the last panel, which our good friend Osh Savor from Mesa was on, along with YouTube and with somebody from, I can't remember, the Ring Concierge, I think it was what it was called. But they were talking a lot about, I think the brand safety issues from a brand marketer point of view are less around like what a computer can do to your brand. They're still trying to deal with what people can do. That's
what I mean.
Problem.
That's what if someone has nefarious intent and knows how to harness generative AI and can intentionally do damage to the brand? How does the brand deal with that? I think that's something.
I think brand safety in the user generated content world is a gigantic open question, and there was a lot. YouTube was trying to talk about that in this session about how they're basically they're still going to be very human guardians for what that content looks like and how that content is managed. And I think it's going to be a major virtue of either different platforms, or, I had some really good conversations with my friends at Bizarre Voice about this too, about what they're trying to do in the user generated content ecosystem, be able to sort of manage that content flow in some really interesting ways. Justin, what did you see there?
Yeah, I mean, on that front, I was surprised to not hear more questions about responsible AI. And I think it's just a function of it for some of the audience. It's new, just the whole idea, and then even seeing it come to life is still, we're really 12 months into this whole generative AI space, I'll call it, and it's moving faster than companies can keep up with the people, and then regulation keep up with the company. So a lot to still unpack there, I think, in the months and weeks ahead.
Wow. So Brian, over to you. Something that caught your attention that was pretty important coming out of Shoptalk.
I thought it was interesting to hear the green shoots of conversation and around the importance of things like storytelling and narrative. And Andrea Lay captured these in a LinkedIn post, which was really good, about just people remembering that to get back to the point of personalization isn't to show off that you can personalize. The point of personalization is to present something with somebody that's meaningful and relevant. And I think that a lot of the personalization conversation, and Peter, you and I have had this conversation before, gets a little show-offy very quickly. It turns into here's what the agency can do rather than here's what makes sense, or here's a strategy that aligns up with that personalization that would have some chance of yielding value. But I think I heard a lot of conversation about this from the brands. I think even Amazon was talking about, I wasn't in Colleen's presentation from Amazon Ads when she kicked off, but a lot of her conversation was around, we may have gone a little too far on the granular side. Like I think at one point she said, I wish we hadn't invented sponsored product ads or something like that, or keywords or sponsored keywords, because the granularity has gotten in the way, I think, of some just basic foundational marketing. And it was really good for me, I think, in a number of these sessions and in the social commerce one that I referenced earlier with Ocean, then I think Bridget from.
I agree with you, Brian.
There was some really good stuff in there about a return to a more narrative-driven approach to marketing.
Do you think that to some degree it spoiled the expectations of advertisers as they start to look more discovery-oriented upper funnel, that they got these precise measurements on mid to lower funnel sponsored search and what have you. And now the attribution timeline, the direct connection, the measurement is they kind of expect it. And when they don't get what they want from an upper funnel perspective, they're a little disappointed. What are your thoughts around that?
Oh, mine, yes.
Yeah, Brian.
Yes, I think that's exactly what's happening. I think there's
yeah.
I wrote a piece. I've not to toot my own horn, but I've written a piece for this with Smart Commerce that'll be coming out, I think, next week. We talk about the balance between efficiency and effectiveness, and if efficiency is doing things right, effectiveness is doing the right things. The problem is that any enterprise that's bigger than a lemonade stand has a gravitational pull towards efficiency because evaluating whether something as defined was done right is way easier than figuring out whether I did the right thing or not. That's not something most big companies can't counterfactually assess what they did. I can A/B test two things. I can't B test nothing, or I can't B test something completely different. That's not the way A/B testing tends to work. So yeah, I do think that there's an expectation from the media ecosystem that the world is going to give them things it will not give them. So, and I think over the next couple of years, we're gonna work through that with the media ecosystem as they get back to a world, honestly, that might look a little bit more like TV. I mean, TV. Everybody knew TV worked, but nobody ever really quite knew how. We knew it was effective, and we kind of all bought the efficiency metrics that came along with it because fine. I think what we've done now on the digital side is we've leaned way into the efficiency metrics, and then we're just presuming it's effective, but it may not be. So.
Last thing on retail media, I got a sense from going to years past, I thought that Shoptalk was going to be the place where retail media high level discussions occurred, and this year I actually think that it shifted to CES. It was very clear to me at CES that everybody showed up and they brought their A team. And I didn't feel like that was necessarily the case. There were a couple of retailers that brought a lot of their people, but I didn't see the plethora of senior level executives at all the retail media platforms at Shoptalk. They seemed to show up at CES in January, and it was, I don't want to say the B team, but it wasn't entirely the varsity team playing at this event. Any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I've never thought of Shoptalk as that event where the retail media and agency kind of leadership is present. Quite frankly, it's hit or miss, and even some that come in to speak leave right away. They don't stick around at Shoptalk. Yeah. So
It strikes me as though Shoptalk is an opportunity to connect Justin, you made this point earlier. It's a great opportunity to connect informally with people and to connect formally with people you don't know because of the meetup architecture. Yeah. But it's not really well designed for a top to top between Walmart Connect and X brand. It's mechanically, it's hard. It's just a hard meeting to do that in, I think. But
they're an events company, right? They put on a great, quality content, but if you really want to connect, it happens on the edges and outside. The one-to-one meetups, like you said, are I think one of the best things about that they.
You open the door, Brian. Let's talk. Justin, tell us about the meetups. What are they, and what did you like or not like about them?
Okay, I'll start. Well, so they launched this across their network of events about 2 years ago. And for those that haven't attended, they wrote software. It's very impressive, where you get to see who's coming and ask to meet with the individuals like Justin, Brian, Peter, et cetera. So, and then if those individuals accept or agree, then you have a one-to-one meeting with them at the show, right? That's these one-to-one meetups, and you have a specific number. And so that is powerful. And it gives you an opportunity to meet people that you might not meet it gives you a chance to also explore in a way that's like, I don't really know if I want to work with these people, but I'll give them 20 minutes. You know what I mean? It's a safe, and it's a really great environment for networking. So I think it's one of the best things that they have launched, and probably one of the most valuable parts of Shoptalk Grocery Shop and Shoptalk Europe. Brian?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think, I think it's always an interesting combination. Like there's a couple people I'll throw into the meetups who I'd like to talk. They're people I know, but hey, like I bump into John Jessup like 17 times at these meetings, but I never have a conversation with him longer than 5 seconds. So
that's because he cloned himself, Brian. There are actually 7 John Jessups. It's Utah. It's Utah.
That's 1440 times 7. Then that's terrifying. So it's like 10,000 and something. But yeah, that's fun, and it's always fun to kind of encounter people that you've known through the ecosystem. But it's nice to put a face to a name. It's nice to meet somebody from a company you've worked with for a while, and there's a variety of use cases for those that I think are super interesting. But I think as a result, because you spend so much time trying to get yourself organized for those, that it would be like, I would find it really hard to imagine on top of that trying to layer in like a significant number of mid to mid or top to tops on top of those. That would be a lot of prep for a meeting.
Yeah, you know what? To that point, Brian, I made a conscious decision this year. How at Grocery Shop and the past we've recorded episodes. I found it too overwhelming. We decided
you and I made a conscious decision.
I know.
Yeah, we consciously uncoupled from that.
We uncoupled from recording episodes. So even not recording episodes, I still found my schedule to be somewhat hectic, including the meetups. Now we should also make mention to people that there are 2 types of meetups. Everyone who participates in Shoptalk has an opportunity to join the meetup program, which is exactly as Justin said. Now, there is also a pay-to-play component called hosted meeting programs. Wow. Works the same way, but basically retailers and brands are incentivized to come to the show. They're given lodging, they're given transportation, what have you, in exchange for making themselves available for these meetings. And suppliers, third-party service providers, agencies, consultants can all try to have meetings. And I would call that if you're a service provider and you come to the show, the yield of what you're going to get from a desired audience is going to be substantially higher grade in the hosted meetings that you're paying for than in just the general population. So that's a very different program. And in talking to a handful of companies that actually did that, they were very, very pleased. I will say this in general. This is one of the few shows that I go to that I see quite a number of brand people that are not on the stage. Like, there were a lot of brand people in the attendee list. I saw a lot of them at our party on Sunday night. I was quite impressed. I looked, there's a conference down in Miami next month, and I know the only brand people are going to be at that conference are up on stage. It's a bunch of service providers sitting around talking to each other. And there's a pretty high quality of brand people at Shoptalk. What do you think?
That's absolutely correct. And I think what was interesting this year was the level of attendee, I don't have the data, but appeared to be higher around the event. Right. And then at the actual event, there was more overlapping dinners and receptions and whatnot than I'd seen in previous events. It's obvious that it's at another level than past. So, and people are there. The customers are there for the vendors that are there. And, and I think it's interesting. My guess is there could be some draw away from doing like a booth, and because it may be more valuable if you're a vendor to do the one-to-one meetups and other things.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. I've talked to a couple of suppliers that said if I have my druthers between hosted meetings or a booth, I'll do hosted meetings because it's a double opt-in. I get to choose a high caliber of person, and I get 15 minutes with them. And that's me sitting around with a show booth, particularly if I have one that's on the perimeter, hoping that someone's going to come by and talk to me.
Right.
I think I'll bet on the sure meeting that I'm going to get out of that. So I think that there is a lot of thought that what Shoptalk's founder Neil Agarwal and in his persona technology company that built the hosted meetup software that Brian made mention of, they built something that really works, and it's unique, and I think it's quite compelling for an attendee, particularly one who wants to make and if you remember, if you go back and listen to Anil's first episode on the CPG guys, he said he created the hosted meeting program as a mechanism, frankly, to make booths on the show floor obsolete. He thought after this, people would realize they would need it. Not the case. Still a big piece of business there, but it makes it level playing field for any size supplier. As long as they're willing to pay for the meetings, they can be judicious about how many meetings they get. But it's a lot less expensive than building like a 20 by 20 booth with 2 levels on it and putting it on the show floor.
And shout out because Anil, though a smart dude, didn't invent this. Like the earliest model I know, this precedes this one by a few years, is actually what Charlie Bolles did with ECRM. It was the same thing.
Yep.
And Charlie basically came to exactly the same conclusion probably 5 years before Anil did in the CPG space, trying to replace a lot and put. And today, a lot of the events that used to be very booth driven in the CPG space are no longer very booth driven as a result. So a lot of those industry association and gathering events have sort of shifted a little bit. Like the interesting one is that the one kind of classic booth driven event that's still growing in the world that I can think of off the top of my head is really Expo West.
That's true.
Oh yeah, very much so.
That one, though, it's almost needed for the startup brands because they need an environment to show off, test my product, come sample. And that event is amazing, but you need a booth for that.
You got to show your wares. The buyers are walking around; they want to pick it up.
And I'm glad, Justin, because I think that was sort of the underlying point I was trying to make, which is that if the booth is a purpose, cool. And if the purpose is to experience the product in a way in which you would not experience it any other way, then yes, I think that's still today, 90% of the companies that are putting up booths at Shoptalk, I don't know that I need a booth to experience, programmatic ad tech. I don't really get a lot out of a 3-dimensional visceral experience of that. So
now, I want to talk about one thing that, while not on stage, I heard it from countless people in the industry, and
grown men came up to you crying.
I know. Well, they kind of did, Brian, because here's what it's about.
Oh my God.
I'm starting to hear
your clothes.
I'm starting to hear a lot of companies that had built out significant e-commerce centers of excellence in light of the pandemic. It went out and hired a lot of people.
Yeah.
Suddenly, they're starting to dissolve those groups.
I was going to say, those people came up to you crying because
that's what I mean. Literally, they came up to me crying. And what I heard was quite a number of companies are now trying to move that responsibility back into the general marketing responsibilities. And they're saying, okay, we're back to focusing on stores where most of the sales are. We don't necessarily need to treat this like it's a completely separate discipline. The marketers of today have to be skilled in all aspects of marketing, and that includes a lot of this e-commerce and retail media. What did you hear? Was that something that you're starting to sense?
I certainly heard a lot, and heard some of that pre-shop talk as well. Mm-hmm. My fear with this, as always, is that this is the big six consulting company technique of choice. So, so every company's under cost pressure because inflation's jamming their margins up, and is now starting to jam their margins up because companies weren't smart enough to unforecast the margin growth that they've gotten out of the last couple of years. So they tried to calibrate it, didn't calibrate it enough. They're now under margin pressure because the retailers aren't taking the price increases that they were taking during COVID. And so you call your resident consulting company saying, I need to save $50 million in expense. And somebody comes along with the philosophical notion that these skills should be embedded in teams. And then you get rid of the people that are actually responsible for this. This was an observation I made a couple of times to people. And it was that because somebody said to me at one point, they're like, well, yeah, I think on average, companies are much smarter about digital than they used to be. And I thought about that for a second. I'm like, yeah, maybe. Sure, I'll buy that. The problem is that average can mean a couple of different things. I think the mean capability of companies has gone up. So if you think about the arithmetic mean, I think that's gone up. I don't know that the median has. So I think what happened is that smart people about digital have gotten smarter, and that's made the company smarter. But I think there's still a vast percentage of people that actually don't know enough now to make the leap into a digital future. And that leap's not getting easier. It's getting harder. Like, understanding a digital content scorecard is one thing. Understanding the data engineering that goes into getting a clean room to work is a very different thing. And that, to me, is where I think this center of excellence removal process might have been a little premature in terms of the hope that these skills are actually embedded in a company. Well, so I don't know that organizations today are any better at propelling themselves forward than they were 6 months ago. Let's put it that way.
Justin, you obviously talk to brands and retailers about how they are looking to manage all their data assets, do all this processing, build better skills. What are you hearing from particularly at Shoptalk and around the market right now that they're all concerned with right now?
Yeah, so that's it. I'll build on what the comments you guys are making. The commentary that I had quite a few times last week was around this whole idea of unified commerce. So not only the op model, right, the people part and where it sits and whatnot, but the connectivity between legacy e-commerce parts of the business and stores. Many of our retail customers still struggle with that, right? Still separate and not connected. And then it's interesting, some of the kind of the standard go-to-market B2C platforms out there, many of our customers are looking to evolve that, right? And they're looking to evolve the flexibility and capability of those platforms. And so I did hear a lot of that discussion last week, and I'm seeing it come through in a lot of the discussions and meetings we're having. And the interesting thing that links onto it is a topic that we have not talked about, but is back in front again, is loyalty. And loyalty is part of that commerce play. And I mean, it has come up so many times in the last couple of months with our retail customers and last week. And I was just like, where did this, it's I don't know what's piping it back up.
I think I do. And I think a lot of it has to do with clean room technology and the ability now to measure, I'm not going to say lifetime value, but long-term value. Certainly that is something that I know Flywheel has been focused on very squarely with access to to Amazon Marketing Cloud's API and the ability to create dashboards around it. Actually truly measuring long-term value is something that is much easier to do with big data sets. And I think that's why in this age of challenger brands coming up, the big brands want to make sure, what's my customer acquisition cost? And is it worth, is that cost worth what I'm going to yield as part of a longer term value of those customers? I think that plays a lot into it.
Yeah. And I think this is an interesting conversation that the Future of Retail Media panel with Andrew Lipsman and Evan from Kenview and the Pinterest and Campari. And I apologize, I can't remember the names of the people that were on the panel from those two places, but it was, it was interesting to hear Kenview talk about incrementality and this will get back to loyalty, where, people are basically trying to come up with proxies for incrementality. iROAS is a proxy for incrementality, and so much of that goes into the assumptions that you're using to build iROAS. If you're smart and you do it like Claire White at Albertsons does, you get to something useful. You can do it other ways where it's less useful. So that's a thing. A lot of people are trying to use new to brand as a proxy for incrementality. That may make sense to a small brand that is new to the world. I just think any assumptions you throw around that for, Band-Aid. Like I don't know what you're trying to do when you're measuring new to brand Band-Aid shoppers, right? Like,
I try to tell brands
adult in the world that hasn't heard of Band-Aid. So
I think you hit it right on the head, Brian. I tell any brands that look at the new to brand measurement is it's new to brand at that retailer in that platform. Yeah, it's but not necessarily new to brand unless you have a true omni-channel picture.
The problem is Evan made this point. He goes, look, I don't care about that. Like, I'm the media buyer for Kenvue. I'm not the media buyer for Kenvue at Walmart. Right? I don't care if they're new to the brand at Walmart. If they were buying at Target yesterday, it doesn't help me.
That's what I mean.
So I think what everybody's grasping for are measures that are more commercially salient than ROAS, and then wandering into a range of other things as a way to try to bring something to the conversation that looks relevant. And loyalty is one of those things. As a retailer in particular, that matters to me, right? Like customer lifetime value, even if it's not precise, even if I can just validate that the concept of it is true, and that I'm going to increase share of wallet over some measurable period of time in the future by some amount, that could fundamentally change the way I think about what I do. And then obviously I think the other thing is that retailers are looking at their loyalty cards, especially small and medium-sized ones, where they're being told their audiences are too small. And then figuring out, okay, well, how do I take this data that I have and turn it into something by tying it to clean rooms or aggregating it or doing something to make it bigger. So I think there's a lot of conversation in and around the mechanics of loyalty, i.e. loyalty cards and loyalty programs. And then the concept of loyalty in terms of it approximating something resembling incrementality.
Justin, anything else on your list that we did?
The last thing I'll just mention is, a not surprising lack of discussion on supply chain. Versus last year, when there was a lot of shortage and trying to get product on shelves and whatnot. But there was a bit of push-pull between we're ready to innovate, we're ready to grow, we're trying to build, launch new brands, and we want to do SKU rationalization and cost optimize. You know what I mean? There's this tension playing out a bit with both retailers and brands, and that was the last thing I observed just in the conversations last week.
Brian, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was talking to a retailer about this at dinner next to one of the retailers that was there who comes from more of an operational background. And they were a little disappointed at the range of solutions that were there. As for whatever reason, it just wasn't a very big, there weren't a lot of supply chain providers there.
Yeah.
I mean, Justin, you compared it to NRF earlier. I mean, I think if you think about NRF, there's like 75 times as many supply chain solutions on display at NRF. But I do think that the demand creation aspects of supply chain management weren't being talked about a lot. I think that the observation that this show got very demand side, I think is totally fair, and very demand technology side. And a lot of the conversation was around how to link together different types of demand creation technologies without really thinking through what some of the implications were on demand fulfillment or shelf management or anything like that. I mean, one of my favorite throwaway statistics is, look, if you look at a grocery store today, 5% of all the trips to an American grocery store today are somebody shopping for somebody else. So like that's 5% of the in-aisle traffic is one human being buying something for another off of a list that they've been given. Not somebody's husband, but the actual paid person doing that. By 2030, that'll probably triple unless retailers come up with another solution for this. So now all of a sudden you've got one shopping trip in 6 that's basically going to be treating the store like a warehouse, not like a store. And like Justin, you know better than I do because where you work, like the way Amazon lays out a warehouse is not the way you would lay out a store, right? Like this is not. No. There's the disciplines you use to merchandise something when you're trying to get somebody to pick the right item are just really different. So, and there was just none of that conversation, and I think some of that also tied back to the fact that the store, though, there was a lot of conversation, and certainly Andrew Lipsman and the Pledge of Allegiance slides were there on the power of in-store retail media. Mm-hmm. So, but there actually weren't a lot of solutions there that were even tying the problem through to the store. as a piece. Like, I still think that's I think that's an area that's going to need a lot more exploration.
Yeah, I would encourage anyone, if you're not following Andrew's Substack newsletter, you should certainly make some time to do that. Go look at Andrew Lipsman on LinkedIn and subscribe to it. It's free. You can pay him money for it if you want, but at a minimum, you absolutely should. But if you're thrifty, you can avail yourself of a lot of the content that he's creating, and he is an incredibly thoughtful person and has built a lot of subject matter expertise in this area. Brian, anything we haven't covered that you wanted to make mention of?
No, I think not especially. No, I think I think we've hit most of the big areas that I heard. I think the other interesting thing is that the one last piece I would bring up, and Justin would be curious. I would really be curious for your point of view on this too. Is I think there's a lot more realization that partnership is going to be the way forward here from a solutions point of view, not just between retailers and brands, but between retailers, brands, and third parties, and between the third parties themselves. Like, I think there's a lot more awareness of, that whole thing. If you want to run fast, run alone. If you want to run far, you want to run far, go together. And I think the ecosystem is beginning to realize that it needs to go far as much as it needs to go fast. And I do think you're starting to see entities trying to think through this sort of partnership thing, the one I have an example because they bought me dinner. So thank you to my friends at the Trade Desk and Cody who have formed a really interesting partnership around on-platform versus off-platform media. But I saw a number of conversations like that between providers in adjacent spaces that are trying to sort some of these kind of things out. So like if like what Axonet's trying to do in the convenience store retail media space, partnering with Cusick for in-store audio and Zitcha for their media platform. There's a bunch of just really interesting sort of solutions that are bundling together in ways that they may have been trying to go it alone before, which I think will ultimately be very, very good for the ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree. I had a number of meetings with those partners in this last week, in addition to customers, and a lot of discussion between the SIs and the ISVs, right? That are, one has come in with like a niche solution, but needs services help to be able to deploy and scale. And it's it'll be interesting to see how some of those relationships play out, whether they, come together and just create a solution and go to market with it, or do they, join companies and whatnot. I think they'll be really interesting to see, especially over the next 6 to 12 months, how that progresses. We might even see some of that progress through like grocery shop and whatnot.
So just for the acronym police, because it sounded like you're throwing Sports Illustrated down against the respiratory virus. So what are SIs and ISVs?
SI, so think of that as like your typical consulting firms, right? For those that are not familiar, like maybe an Accenture, a Deloitte, a Slalom.
System integrator, got it, yes.
Yeah, system integrator. Perfect. And then when we talk about ISVs, independent software vendors, so it may be a company that's really good at like maybe generative AI models, or really good at some aspect of supply chain, right? They develop
I always call those guys point solution providers versus integrators. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay. Right. In terms of partnerships, I also heard whispers of a new term called collaborative commerce. Justin, anything you care to? Maybe another day you'll come back and talk to us about that?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a real opportunity, I think, to make better use of retailer data and helping that to drive decisions. And so, yeah, I think not only have we been talking about this idea of collaborative commerce in terms of, the data that comes from, let's say, a retailer plus the data that comes from Amazon, how that enables a decision. But it's funny because the conversation around data is not new. It's been around for many years. And what is new and what's changed is some of the tech that enables the access to it. And it's become even more important as we think about things like AI. So, yeah, I think more to come there. And I could probably come back on and talk more about that.
Looking forward to it. Piquing people's curiosity. Brian, Justin, thanks for taking time out of your Sunday evening to chat through Shoptalk. Looking forward to seeing you both in Kalamazoo, Michigan at Western Michigan University's Food Marketing Conference.
I can't even wait. That's going to be great. I can't even wait.
I know. All right. Well, listen, and to our audience, thanks for taking time out. We're going to take this LinkedIn Live and get it out in podcast form shortly as well. But great to see so many wonderful people at Shoptalk. Looking forward to a grocery shop this fall. And I think, I know a couple of us are probably going to be over at Shoptalk Europe in June in Barcelona. So lots more events coming our way. Thanks everybody for joining. Hope you have a fabulous week ahead, and we'll talk to you down the road. Take care.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.